It is Wednesday, 2018. RawMikeRichards.com broadcasting live from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto. Coming up on the show, we'll recap what happened over a busy New Year's holiday. Lots of football. The passing of Johnny Bauer, which was, well, quite frankly, going to happen. But, boy, it was still tough news. Nice memorial service last night at the ACC. World Juniors continue. Team Canada hammers on Switzerland just like the good old days. Have you been watching the tournament? Has this been a tournament of significance for you? Also, we'll take a look at the NFL. We now know exactly what the playoffs are going to look like, which will be a short week for us, Dave, so therefore we'll be jamming in, probably taking a look at some early lines, and then, is it Stephen Rapp on Friday?
You got it.
Old Stephen Rapp going to join us.
He's another year older.
Still going. That's what they say. He's still going, huh? Isn't that something? 2018. Joe Bartnick, our good friend, I'm sure we'll be talking about some Penguins at some point. Stand-up extraordinaire, also from the blog Puck Off. We'll also take a look today at the return of Isaiah Thomas. You know, the one that still plays. Kind of. Came in for one game for the Cavs, and then, well, you'll find out what happened, and he's not playing the next game. Busy, that Isaiah Thomas. So welcome to 2018. Does it feel any different? Did you make any New Year's resolutions? I've never done that, Dave. Ever.
Never.
No. Why? I'm just, either they're way too good that I would never even achieve them. I'm someone that has certain goals, but that's just, I do it like 4 or 5 times a year to see where I've got to be. But just because it's New Year's, I don't necessarily go, I'm going to do this, because I never do.
Yeah. Goals and goal orientation should probably take place throughout your life, not on one day of the year.
This is why the busiest place, and I have a family member that works in the industry, but the busiest place in the new year is every gym facility, all the gyms. Like starting like January 2nd, January 3rd. They're packed. If you've ever belonged to a gym or do belong to a gym, you know if it's public.
It's the ongoing joke.
Then here it comes.
But the good part is by February 1st, it's back to normal.
As it lasts, it's like I'm bathing suit season. Don't worry about it. I see you looking at that machine, and I see that you bought all the new gear, you got all the Under Armour equipment on, and you got headbands, and you got all kinds of stuff happening there, multicolors. You got a nice towel there. Hey, that's good there, Skippy. You won't make it. You're not going to make it.
Rusty told me that he's gonna quit smoking.
Yeah, he's smoke.
Yeah, like between commercial breaks on this show. He's out the front door.
He's like a walking province of Quebec. Just can't love the smokes, right? Rusty, do you ever make? I mean, I can't imagine you having to make any sort of changes in your life. You're like the perfect kid. Like you don't do anything wrong. So, and for the first time this year, let's there it is.
Bring him in.
And let's go to the 2018 Ruscam.
No, I don't think I've ever made a New Year's resolution. Every year, kind of in school, first semester, I get lazy with the gym. So every kind of second semester, I start back up. But like you guys said, I usually take the first couple weeks off when the first people are in the gym, and then I'll go in when everyone leaves.
But you can't see with the Ruscam, I don't believe. But am I noticing the start of a mustache?
It's
this is something you've been working on for what, the last couple of years there?
for a little over a month.
A month, nice. Well, you can see it. There's a.
He got a haircut though over the holidays. I could tell that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. Well,
But you said stash stays.
stash stays.
Stash stays.
Yeah.
Hey,
Just
Pierre. Little
Yeah.
off here, nothing down here.
Yeah. Looks good.
It's a sad attempt,
Yeah.
but it's an
Look,
attempt.
half the Maple Leafs can't grow them anyways.
He's getting ready for that Maple Leaf the playoff run.
We won't be able to tell whether half that team can really grow a mustache or not, because I have a feeling that a lot of them can't.
Just Matt Martin.
You know,
And Patrick Marleau. Patrick
can.
Patrick Marleau will grow a
he has
massive-
actual testosterone and he's produced children, so
Yes.
so we know that he's got something going on there.
Connor Brown, surprisingly good beard. Had a good one with the
Really?
Marlies last year.
Really?
and
Because I don't see.
remember that
Yeah.
picture, yeah.
good one
Yeah.
with the Marlies and like a decent one through the first round with the Leafs last year.
Okay.
Surprisingly, but not bad.
Well, speaking of things, Maple Leaf. When I saw the passing of Johnny Bower, and this is why you can't really take things for granted. Always one of my favorite interviews. Whenever I've seen him, it's like he is with everybody, Dave. He's the most and was the most gracious person you're going to meet for a guy of that substance who meant that much to a franchise. And I thought, for he and his wife, I thought maybe I'll just pop by if they'd like to have lunch or something for an afternoon. For the last year or so, I've been thinking that I would like to do that just because he was not only just to me, but for like a lot of people, like your favorite uncle. And you wait long enough, and that time's going to go by, and it did. And so the passing of Johnny Bower, which was mammoth here in Toronto, I think for the hockey community, for the city itself, and certainly for those that go back to when they actually won a Stanley Cup. But that didn't matter. I think he was so much more than just a former player, someone that had won a Stanley Cup that most people, quite honestly, of a certain age group just don't remember. But they did a nice job, so courtesy of our friends at Sportsnet, this was the ceremony they did last night at the ACC.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please rise if you're able to? Remove your hats and join us in a moment of silence to honor the life of the great Johnny Bower.
The whole family out there, by the way, along with players like Dave Keon and George Armstrong, hand in hand, and they'll look at the statue of Johnny outside the building.
Thank you.
The banner and then the tribute video that we're going to play.
I do want to say it's good to gather we won the Stanley Cup again for the city of Toronto. I certainly feel that they deserve it. They're wonderful fans, and I hope we can do it again next year. Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
On November 8th, 1924, in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Johnny Bower was born. The second of 9 children, no brothers, 8 sisters. When he was just 14, he lied about his age and enlisted in the Army with the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders. During World War II, he would spend 2 years in England before returning home to Saskatchewan in 1944. 14 years later, on June 3rd, 1958, Johnny Bower was claimed by the last-place Maple Leafs from the Cleveland Barons in the AHL Interleague Draft. But he didn't want to go. I kept telling them I couldn't help them, but they warned me if I didn't sign, they would suspend me. That fall, after playing 12 years in the American Hockey League, the winningest goalie in AHL history would be in Maple Leaf, blue and white. At age 33, he was instantly the oldest player on the team. In fact, for every game of his 12 seasons in Toronto, he would always be the oldest on the team. And for his final 10 seasons, he was the oldest player in the league. Of course, Johnny preferred to play without the protection of a mask, at times intentionally blocking shots with his face and thwarting oncoming attackers with his signature poke check before they could even begin their assault on the Toronto net. Johnny explained his style simply as this: I just made up my mind that I was going to lose my teeth and have my face cut to pieces. Johnny's career accomplishments are impressive and weave their way through one of the most beloved eras in the franchise's history. A 4-time Stanley Cup champion, he would drink from the cup in '62, '63, and 64 when he told the Gardens fans after the final game that the city of Toronto deserves the Stanley Cup more than anybody else. Then in 1967, as part of the oldest team that has ever won, or likely ever to win the Stanley Cup, Johnny won his fourth. After 67, Johnny would suit up for 3 more seasons before retiring at age 45. Since then, he has filled the roles of goalie coach, practice goalie, scout, and for team Christmas parties, yes, Santa Claus. Along the way, Johnny has made more appearances in our community than any Maple Leafs player in history. He most certainly holds the record for standing ovations at Air Canada Centre. As engaged in his 94th year as he was when he arrived in Toronto in 1958, Johnny has always treated every fan as if they were the first that ever wanted to shake his hand. Always gracious, always wondering what all the fuss was all about. Johnny was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1976. His number 1 was raised to the rafters of Maple Leaf Gardens in 1995 and was permanently retired 21 years later. 2014, he became one of the inaugural members of Legends Row, and in our centennial season, he was selected 7th as a part of the 100 greatest Leafs in team history. King Clancy once said of his friend, "Bauer is a great credit to the game. Of all the people who are in the Hall of Fame, there is no one more worthy than Johnny Bauer. He has been one of the most honest and conscientious players produced. He is in a class by himself as a person." There may not be a more loved Toronto Maple Leaf, nor a former player who loved them as much back.
The first star, Johnny Bauer.
Number 1 in your program for every game he ever played, Johnny will remain number 1 in the hearts of generations of Leafs fans forever. Maple Leaf family, one more time, please rise to your feet if you can and give our Johnny one more standing ovation.
That was so well done. That was magnificent by a guy who actually was really a friend of Johnny Bauer's, and that, of course, Joe Bowen. We'll hear from him one more time before the show is over, but I thought that was well done, well said, and for a guy that was so much more than just a former goalie who won a Stanley Cup. Even in this town, it still was more than that, and he might go down as maybe, I mean, it's arguable, but one of the most popular people, not just athletes, in the city of Toronto. You're watching RawMikeRichards.com. You're watching it on the dedicated YouTube channel. We appreciate those who have subscribed to us. Also subscribe to the website itself. We appreciate it. We're pretty excited about 2018. Got some stuff coming your way, including more names to the list of those that are going to support us. So we're excited about that, as 2018 might also provide us maybe some interesting football playoffs for once, Dave. I mean, sometimes you get to this point, you see some of the wild card situations. You're not sure if you're going to get a decent game or not. And then sometimes there is such a dominant team that at some point you sort of take a look at how engaging is the playoff going to be when invariably you know who's going to win a Super Bowl. I don't think that's one of these years. I really don't. As much as we think we have a good idea, I think at least we were going to have some decent playoff games from some teams who have not seen playoffs in a long time, and for those who have also moved cities. So I think, Dave, taking a look at the NFL, I'm actually really curious to see what lies in store for some of these matchups, because as I said, you know, I'm not so sure it's as definite as maybe as I thought it was at one point, because there was a time where I just assumed that we were going to be taking a look at a Patriots team. But this is also a year where
in the AFC, there you think there's a competition?
Oh no, a Super Bowl, just an outright winner, only because they rely so heavily on Tom being terrific, because his standard is just off the charts for what he has done in terms of comebacks, in terms of everything he's able to achieve. If he doesn't have one of those games, and that's the every given Sunday scenario, I don't know if I'm going to sit there and say, okay, I'm putting all my money on this. Although you did get your money on number of wins, I believe.
Yeah. If anybody comes to play in the postseason, it's Tom Brady. I don't think there's any doubt. I think the path is already paved to the Super Bowl. when I look at teams like Tennessee and Buffalo getting into the postseason, I kind of laugh at that, because if those two teams pull off any sort of upset against the teams they're playing, it's not even going to be close. I don't think Kansas City really deserves to be there considering what they did in the midway point of the season. Jacksonville's a pretty good team. I think Jacksonville might be the second best team in that conference. I think Jacksonville is better than Pittsburgh, considering Pittsburgh has a key injury to Antonio Brown, but we'll have to see. If Jacksonville faces Pittsburgh in a scenario, I think Jacksonville wins.
Yeah.
But we'll see what they can do against a New England team. Teams have to travel to New England to win. I don't think anybody's beating New England in New England.
Yeah, Jacksonville's an interesting story, too, because if, let's say, there's substance in this playoff run, do you still entertain Eli Manning going to Jacksonville? Do you sit there to a Blake Bortles and go, thanks for maybe the deepest run we've had in, I don't know how many years, but we are going with the – because I got news, Eli can still play. It's not like Eli's done. I think he can still play.
He's very close to being done. I think we're seeing what we saw with Peyton in the last couple of years, where it's like it's getting close. Eli's going to be 37 years old. I think there's still gas in the tank. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars maybe welcome him to come on board to compete for a job, but do you treat a guy like that who's 37 to compete for a job?
Well, his agent would never let that happen. That would never happen.
I don't know. If Blake Bortles has any kind of postseason, which he may or may not, it is Blake Bortles we're talking about here. I don't think that door is going to be open anymore. If the Jacksonville Jaguars fall, though, there might be something there. It's hard to replace a Blake Bortles that gets you to a conference final. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, we're replacing with you with a guy that's 8 years older than you or 10 years older than you.
Case Keenum. What do you do with Case Keenum if you're Minnesota, depending on how far you go?
What the hell do you do with Minnesota in general?
Yeah.
Because you have Bradford, Keenum, and then whatchamacallit, Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
And it's like, which one are you taking? Because somebody's going to have to get paid here, and they're all free agents.
Bradford, to me, is if I have to let one go, that would be my choice.
Yeah. Too many injuries. It's too bad, though, too, because at the start of the year when he had that monster game on Monday night when he was the greatest quarterback in the history of mankind, I'm not saying that would have continued, but he seemed to have been understanding the offense a little bit more. And then he has that tricky knee little bout with it, that little knee injury that lingered, got worse. And it's because he's had that surgery on it multiple times. You never are the same after a surgery. So I don't know. I think it's a buyer beware on Sam Bradford. Maybe they bring him in at an affordable contract if he wants to go that route. Sam Bradford's made a lot of money, Mike. And he's not going to hit that home run again.
What about Sam? His first they have mansions. They have
multiple mansions.
It's not like they're like, oh, here we go, White Castle again. No, that's not that life. But when you think about it, you sort of bring up a point where for next year, there's still going to be some names that I'm looking for. So Deshaun Watson's going to be one of them because we never got a chance to really see just how good that could be because the trend was one of, pretty high level. I mean, I think an expectation was there, but that means nothing in the NFL. You've got to actually get it done, and he walked the walk. And, of course, the real sad story of Carson Wentz, to me, that's a heartbreaker because I was really looking forward to seeing what he would do in the playoffs. And not that Philadelphia, you just write them off, but come on. The best part of that story was Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz was an awesome story, and they have their foundation piece in place. And you hope that teams that are drafting quarterbacks this offseason are in that same that realm of making sure that they get their piece. You look at the Rams. They got their piece in order, Mike. He's going to be that quarterback for the next decade. Philadelphia is. Can the Browns do the same? The Giants will be drafting a quarterback at the number 2 position. The 49ers finally have their guy. Jimmy G is magnificent.
No, I know, because Jimmy G, you're all over this.
Oh,
and did not disappoint, by the way.
And a perfect 5-0 on betting with Jimmy G again, because I ended up, here's a good story for you. I ended up going 7-3 on Sunday to win for the second consecutive year the Inside the Lines regular season.
Good.
I was last, and I went 7-3 to win it. It was close. It was tight. So it was Stephen Rapp, George, and me. And now it's the reverse order.
Jeez, I thought you would have wiped them out.
I usually do.
Yeah.
Well, it hasn't been a very good year as far as betting against the number.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's not straight up. Speaking of betting, how'd you make out in your bowl games? To me, again, the tricky thing about bowl games is you never pretty quite know what the motivation's going to be. Now, why people are so surprised that Georgia came back, I don't know. Because to me, I like Georgia to win that game, but in the fashion that it did, that was an insane Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl is generally
crazy?
Always my favorite, but it was even crazier. And I'll be honest, because of the Oklahoma coach who made some very strange decisions. I'll never understand this squib kick. 6 seconds left. Your team just scored a crazy touchdown. Your quarterback catches it, off like a triple option. And with 6 seconds left just to go into the dressing room, you squib it. So you don't get the ball. Mm-hmm. One play later, or literally 2 plays later, Georgia's kicking a field goal to make it just 2 scores. Immediately in the third quarter, because Georgia has a great running game, Chubb runs into the end zone. Now you're down 1 score. Literally, if you're looking for the quote-unquote TSN turning point, it was that. In fact, that might go down as historically one of the worst calls ever in the history of the Rose Bowl or any big bowl game, because guess what? That 3 points, that's why it goes to overtime. That's what happened. You gave them that 3 points. I'll never understand it. And I think if you're going to take a look at big fails, that was a massive fail to me. And then, by the way, Alabama goes out and blows out Clemson. So you've got Alabama and Georgia. I think most people would be on the Alabama side, but I'll be cheering for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, -4 Alabama favorites in this one.
Yeah, really 4, okay. Which is, but again, college football, the reason that college sports for the most part is always so great to me and so engaging is because normally it's the kids who make the mistakes. It's the kids who make the mistakes. In this one, I fully blame the coaching staff at Oklahoma for making some of those. And even down the stretch, there was some real iffy calls. I don't know what that was about, but guess what? Because of that, you ain't going on. And if you want to be angry, if you're an Oklahoma Sooner, blame your head coach.
There you go.
Coming up very shortly right here, we're going to give the legendary Joe Bartnick a phone call, and
he just sent me a text. We've been going back and forth just to make sure I have all the numbers in order. We're going to be calling him in San Francisco this morning.
Ooh.
He's in San Francisco bright and early. I guess that would be, is that a 3-hour difference?
Yes, it is.
7:30 in the morning, San Francisco time.
And he's a stand-up, so no stand-ups ever get up at this time.
No.
So let's.
But Joe's number 1 for a reason, right? And our first guest of 2018.
That's true too. There should be some magical
I sold him
music
on that too. So he was into that.
That was the big deal.
Oh yeah.
And this is very exciting.
Hello.
I am calling the home of Jimmy Garoppolo, who I understand is now the greatest quarterback who has ever lived, but I'm also looking for Joe Bartnick if he's there.
Yeah, I'm available. I'm at the bar.
Buddy, you are the first guest on the show of 2018. My goodness, what an honor that is.
Mike, I'm completely honored.
So, San Francisco, this is where we're calling. You got some gigs out there? You working some shows?
I got a show tonight at a porno bar.
Nice.
What?
You're combining.
Yes.
You're combining the two worlds.
Yes.
This is what you're doing.
Explain that to us, Joe. Good morning, by the way.
How you doing, Dave? Happy New Year.
And to you and your family.
Yes, you guys as well. Well, you know how there's sports bars that run sports on television?
Yes.
Well, this is San Francisco. So they have a bar that runs porn on television 24/7.
What a great idea. How come I never thought of this? I got to be honest, I'm a little embarrassed by the advent of this happening. So let's take a look in the world.
Well, I'm always just afraid to have the nachos.
Yeah, I would say beefaroni, also a no-no. And I got to be honest, anything seafood-like, you just don't know. I mean, you really.
Oh, exactly.
Not that I'd be upset if I see Sasha Grey flipping a couple of hot dogs or whatever imagery you want to come up with, but I would think that the buffet is probably not really where you want to take the wife. Although, what a great wife that would be. Yeah. Yeah, so let's get to the NHL. Joe, you're taking a look at a season where I don't know. We saw last night, I guess by all rights, the best team in the league, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I thought the Leafs sort of played what was similar to a playoff game. They kind of went toe-to-toe with them a little bit, but what the Leafs are short on, and that's basically probably another elite defenseman at the back end, Tampa Bay, with that goaltender, man, oh man, they're going to be awfully tough to beat. Awfully tough.
Yes, I mean, I actually picked Tampa Bay to win the East and basically win the Stanley Cup this year. They had last year's playoffs off. They've regrouped. They picked up Chris Kunitz for a little leadership. They got frontline scoring. They got second line scoring. Now they got that young defenseman. They got everything. And Vasilevsky is a brick wall back there.
Yeah.
There's nothing that team needs. I mean, they're getting scoring from everywhere, and now Tyler Johnson's heating up as if the league needed that.
Are they going to tinker? You just mentioned it, Joe. I agree with you. Are they going to tinker at all with that lineup? Like, are they going to add another piece? Because I look at Tampa Bay at the trade deadline, maybe looking for third or fourth line depth, because that's all they really need. And quite frankly, I don't even know if they need that. But a lot of times, you just want to add another body to put on the ice.
I could see getting just tinkering just a little bit. But, it seems like every team that's great at the trade deadline and then tries to tinker messes up the chemistry. But with that team, if anything, I'd see maybe just a depth defenseman, because you just run through defensemen at, come playoff time. You're always one short, it seems like, when you need one.
Who's the team for you that is sitting in a position that you not only did not expect, you don't think that they'll actually follow through on it? If you're looking at, let's say, the Metropolitan, I believe you have a team that you enjoy, that you follow in that particular division. What about like a New Jersey? Is this a surprise to you? Do they hold on? Can they hang?
I think they can hang. I mean, can they do any damage in the playoffs? That remains to be seen. But I definitely think they're going to hang around. Ray Shearer's going to make some moves at the deadline. He's a wheeler and a dealer, and he kind of got a little bit of a raw deal by hanging his hat on the sinking Dan Blasma ship in Pittsburgh. But he was a really good GM. So, and he's making things happen in New Jersey. They have a great coach. You talk about a team that has a little bit of everything. Schneider bounced back this year. I always considered them the Expendables. Just a bunch of pros coming in there and winning some games. And now the Expendables are in Vegas. And New Jersey just seems to be like a team with some good mojo, some good young juju, if you know what I mean. Just guys that are winners on that team.
Hey, speaking of winners, last year's Stanley Cup, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, they're sitting outside of a playoff spot. Joe, what are they going to do right now? Because there's got to be a little bit of panic settling in. We're at the midway point of the season.
Yes, it's hard to complain about your team that's won back-to-back Stanley Cups.
Sure,
it really is. Right now, they're not getting second and third line scoring. Because of course they lost Bonino, they lost Cullen, they lost Kunitz. But they've always had the influx of young kids to come up. And this year they brought up Sprong. Hopefully he can add a little bit of juice. But, I think where they're really porous is on defense. Letang was out, but let's face it, Letang has only lived up to his name a few times over his career. Other than that, he's always a little bit more hat than cattle. They really miss Justin Schultz, and I'll tell you, they really miss Daly, and they really miss Hainsey. Like they've just lost such quality defensemen. They can't get the puck up to their forwards. I don't know. Hunwick's been a disaster, in my opinion, and Frankie Corrado, he's a minor leaguer, and that's just what they have. Ruido's great every now and then. You can't eat every day with Ruido. They just need some more defensemen.
By the way, bringing up the Expendables, and how many have they made? Have they made 10 of them? I don't know. There's way too many of them, and they are the kings of the cheese line. But one of my favorites, because I just never really thought about it. So Stallone has just machine gunned down. What are they, like 25 Eastern European guys or fake Russian people or whatever the bad guys are in those movies? And Stallone, after he guns them down, he goes, "Rest in pieces." I'm like, how? You're part of this industry. Are you sitting in the room and the one guy goes, "You know what'd be great? How about this one? Rest in pieces instead of rest in peace. What about that one? I love it."
Well, it goes through a focus group. There's about 30 middle-aged women, and they decide everything that comes out of Hollywood.
Exactly. We're in conversation with Joe Bartnick. He is calling us from San Francisco. Is that a good town to play, by the way? I think a lot of comics like playing there.
Oh, I love San Francisco.
Yeah.
The Punchline is where I started comedy at. It's my home comedy city. I love the city.
You just don't want to live in it because it's like it's so expensive. Like it's crazy if you got to live there though, man. It's just even the small apartment. It's just unbelievable.
No, I mean you're better off just renting a car and living in a super SUV.
Hey, you know one thing we don't get to talk about much because I don't. Are you much of an NFL guy? Are you a Steeler fan? What are you?
Well, I know I love the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers are like the Roman Catholic Church of Pittsburgh. You just have to every Sunday. It's the Steelers, and I grew up with Swan and Stallworth and Mean Joe. So those are my Steelers. But I know, of course, I love the Steelers. Absolutely. I just don't follow the NFL. I've actually become way more of a college fan. It just seems like I like the action more on Saturday than all the dancing and let's celebrate a third down and 5. And just so many substitutions, and I just don't like how 3rd and 1 is 5 wide receiver shotgun. Like, let's hand the ball off and hit someone in the mouth.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm a huge college guy. Did you get a chance to see the Rose Bowl? Because that was nuts. The Oklahoma-Georgia game was crazy. That was worth the money.
I was there. It's my 10th year in a row I've seen the Rose Bowl, and this year I actually remember more than 3 plays.
Wow.
So you've been to 10 of them?
I've gone to 10 in a row. Yeah, that's kind of our tradition. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's like the. I mean,
that's a pretty good tradition.
I used to follow. I mean, I go back to the Pac-8 days. So this is, so basically the Rose Bowl is always, hopefully we get a shot in there. I lived in Eugene, Oregon, so I was always a Duck guy, and I thought at the times that I went to their games back in the 70s, there was no way they were seeing any kind of bowl games. I was just praying for like a first down. Like every couple of games, could we just get a first down? So it really changed for me. But back in the days where you had the Michigans and Ohio States perennially coming in, and they're going to play a UCLA or whoever the team was, or USC of the time. So this matchup was crazy, and really aside from the squib kick, which I don't know, I have no idea what the coaching staff was thinking for Oklahoma. That was an unbelievable game.
It really was. I mean, we've seen some classics the last few years that have just been phenomenal. Like I think 2 years ago, Penn State scored 7 straight touchdowns and lost. Just phenomenal football. But yeah, this year there was just something on the line. There's a different feel. The whole place was buzzing. All 92,000 people were just buzzing. And it was great to see the quarterback from Oklahoma. He's going to be a legend maybe someday. I don't know. I just love that kid. And I'm an SEC guy. I love the SEC, so it was great seeing the Bulldogs pull that one out. It was just fun stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, Joe. I had no idea. The things you learn, right?
Yeah.
10 years. Jeez, that's awesome.
Hey, speaking of Oregon, that's what I learned. I learned how to do pickleback shots from the girls from Oregon. It was fantastic.
Oh, class all the way. I've always said that about the girls there. What do you call these? Pickle what?
Pickleback shot. So you can take the cheapest, most horrible tequila or whiskey, and after you do a shot of it, then you drink a little bit of pickle juice, and it tastes awesome.
It does.
What?
Yeah,
combo.
I didn't see that on any of the Gordon Ramsay shows. You'll have to. I didn't know that was a thing. Pickleback.
It's big with the college kids. It saves them money. You can get some generic pickle juice and some cheap rock gut vodka, and away you go.
Wow.
They're innovators, these college kids.
Yeah, they certainly are, Joe. Okay, let me ask you this: when are the Vegas Golden Knights gonna act like the Vegas Golden Knights and start falling? Because yesterday they win again. It's a very good Nashville team they shut out, and man, they're getting contributions from everybody in this lineup. A lot of no-namers up front that people are now beginning to know. When you looked at this roster, you knew the goaltending was going to be set as long as they were healthy, and they are right now. When's this team going to start falling? Because Cinderella hasn't hit midnight yet. But as a Western Conference guy and a Winnipeg Jet guy, I'm waiting for this team to fall, and they're not doing it.
Well, let's get to your second point first. Let's go Winnipeg Jets. I love the Winnipeg Jets. I was shocked they re-signed Paul Maurice. I almost hit the ground. But now look at them. If they can just withstand Scheifele's injury, they're going to be in fantastic shape. They're doing it with either an injured buff or an inefficient buff. But that might be the secret there. Too much buff was maybe too much. Now, the Vegas Knights, it may just fall apart when George McPhee pulls the plug and just says, you know what, I'm going to take draft picks for Neal and Marchessault, but I don't think he will. I think they want to win in Vegas. I think they can smell it, and I'll give them a round or two. I mean, the Flowers, they did it with their fifth-place goaltender. Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
That's just ridiculous. They're doing it with David Perron. Perron's the biggest dog in the NHL. I mean, Gerard Gallant he's Toe Blake. It's ridiculous. Really, it just goes to prove how stupid the people in Florida were. I mean, they lost Smith, Riley, and Gerard Gallant. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, speaking of smell, let's talk about Edmonton. On many levels, I could use that analogy, but oh my God. Are you telling me after everything they've got on that roster that is it conceivable that like Todd McClellan would lose his job over this? Because right now, we're basically more or less getting close to halfway through the season, and I'm not seeing a trend upwards, my friend.
No, some nights they look okay, and most nights they just look slow. I mean, I am the biggest Milan Lucic. I mean, he's my original man crush. But sometimes he doesn't even catch up to the celebration. There's pieces missing on that team, and I can't figure out where they're at. I mean, obviously they could use like a speedy winger to play, but do you think that's Puljujärvi now? I guess they're missing defense, and I guess Talbot isn't making quite the same, the one or two saves that you need. It is mind-boggling, Mike. What do you say? I think a big mistake was just trying to just have one super line the whole time. You need to spread the wealth, and I think once they slipped Draisaitl, they started winning a little bit more. But then they slide back, and then some days they can't score. I have no answers, to be honest with you. But I think they should try a couple big trades, and probably McClellan is going to be gone because you have to change it up.
Well, the one thing in keeping with the Pacific for a second, very often I'll take a look at what Chicago's going through and the Blackhawks after how great they were for that period of time, which to me almost equals dynasty when you can do what they did. But I understand when you're trying to repeat is almost impossible now with the schedule. What you have to go through to get that done, it's unbelievable when you win two. Los Angeles somehow. Who I put in that same category, that same era of going back and forth and going to Stanley Cup Finals and winning them. But there's Los Angeles last night who look good again. They're in second place in the Pacific. They are contenders. And I'm amazed that they still have that in them. Granted, the changes to go through in the last 4 and 5 years and how much hockey they've played.
Well, they had last year off with no playoffs. And I'll tell you just a couple, you talk about just a little tweak here and there. They brought this kid up, Iafallo. It looked amazing at camp. And all of a sudden, he's on the top line with Dusty Brown, who's had, the Ponce de Leon drinking the fountain. He looks better than he did 8 years ago. Kopitar, of course, he couldn't play as bad as he did last year, but this year he's playing amazing. They get this Kempe kid comes in. They don't even miss Carter. They're going to get Carter back at the deadline.
Yep.
Carter was their best player last year by a ton. If they didn't have Carter last year, they would have been the Colorado Avalanche. And then, they moved out a couple, D guys that weren't getting the job done. They got some younger guys like Forbear and Folan. And they're just moving along, Fettenberg, all the Fs, and they're just moving along. And Quickie looks like Quickie again. I would not want to play the LA Kings in the play. I think they're the team that beat us quick.
Yeah, very good. Hey, right here in this city, Joe, the Toronto Maple Leafs obviously are front and center, as they should be. Right now, losing to Tampa Bay yesterday, pretty good Tampa Bay team, as we mentioned in the past. What are the Leafs going to tinker with in the next month or so? Because we're looking at, as you mentioned, the trade deadline about 5 weeks away. What are the Leafs tinkering with when it comes down to deciding who they're going to bring in?
If I was the Leafs, I would try to maintain all the forwards they have and maybe give away a little bit of the future and get a solid NHL top four defenseman.
Yeah.
Just a complete, and the guy I've had my eye on for a long time is I like Marco Scandella in Buffalo. I don't know where he, obviously Buffalo should be looking to move anybody they can except maybe Eichel. And I like Scandella. Other than that, it's hard to pick who's really completely out of it.
Yeah,
you're going Fisher, but I keep my eye on a Marco Scandella. Maybe some of the guys in Florida might have a look. I know they're saying, I guess looking at Branson's available, but he's not the answer in Toronto, in my opinion. They need a legitimate top 4 guy that's been around the block a little bit. Basically a Ron Hainsey. That's what they need.
A younger version, exactly.
Well, yeah, maybe something they can stick around a little bit longer than Hainsey. But I'll tell you what, I know I'm on in Toronto right now, but Austin Matthews to me is the best young player in hockey. With all due respect to McJesus, I just love Austin Matthews. I think he's got it all going on. He plays where you're not supposed to play when you're a phenom. He seems to will that team above their pay grade sometimes. I just love that kid.
Yeah, well, because you said that, our director now has an erection. Russell has just now.
Thanks for that, Joe.
Fully. And hey, and along that topic, because you're going to be playing in a porn venue tonight, I'm just curious, Joe Bartnick, if you could be married to any of the porn stars over the last 20, 30 years in their prime, like you don't say now, but let's say, could you see yourself married to one of the stars of a day? Did you imagine yourself with one of these stunning ladies? Who would it be?
Oh, I was a big Samantha Strong guy back in the day.
Wow, look at that.
Okay.
Come on, you guys sitting at, well,
there you go.
I don't know what Rusty's doing, but still, Samantha Strong. Mine's always been Chasey Lane. I could see us going to the prom. Of course, it might look different now, but what about you, Dave? Come on, clean cut, Dave.
I don't know if.
He's afraid.
Yeah.
His wife watches the show.
I don't think she's watching.
The funny thing now is there's so much porn on YouPorn that you can just get anybody down the street as a porn star.
Yeah.
Your neighbor's probably doing.
I think I'll take my
now.
neighbor.
Yeah, you might see her tonight. That's good news. Hey, Joey, thanks so much for joining us, pal. It's always great to talk to you. Good luck with the show tonight, and we'll catch up with you again real soon. Thanks for doing this, man.
Thanks, Joe.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thanks, Dave. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to Joe Bartnick. There he is joining us from San Francisco, working at a porn bar.
Well, as soon as he said that, I was like,
this.
Okay, I was like, what the hell is he talking about?
What, like this place couldn't be a porn bar?
Well, sure.
Probably, it probably is.
We leave here at 11 o'clock every morning.
Yeah.
You never know, right?
The porn star's going, we're not doing that. We're not working there. There's a guy in the corner who's looking at a picture of Austin Matthews with an erection. We're not doing that. But you know what? In all honesty, don't you think, Rusty? Pretty fair. That was pretty fair. Dave, what do you think?
I'll take McJesus over Matthews any day.
Okay,
of the
well,
week.
hold on. We need.
Day of the week.
Here comes the response from young Russell Graham.
As much as I like Austin Matthews,
he's agreeing with me.
I'm
Wow.
not ready to say just yet that he's better than McDavid.
Well, you were taking your shirt off. I thought maybe there's gonna be a fight. Like, you know, 'cause you don't want to fight him now with the state that he's in. It's always difficult to.
I just look like last year alone. Art Ross, Ted Lindsay, best player,
so good.
fastest player in the league, fastest with the puck and without.
That's the amazing part about Connor McDavid, though, because just from any level of hockey you play, when you have the puck, you traditionally will skate slower. The guy doesn't skate slower. It is video game-ish. It's almost like puck goes on stick, puck gets taped onto stick, and McDavid just skates with it. It's outrageous how fast the guy is.
And also at this level, Dave, because we saw him play up close. We saw his final game when we went to the Generals game during that playoff. But you know, you look at some guys and you wonder if the transfer also works from one level to the other. And it was I'm drawing blank, the Russian guy who went to saw him playing Ufa, goes to Edmonton.
Yakupov.
Yakupov, when he played in that World Juniors, because you see he had some real what I thought were really lazy traits at that time. So when he was on the ice, when he wanted to be the best player, he just hit that switch and was the best player. The problem is the good ones rarely have it off all that much. Remember we had we were talking about Wayne Gretzky in that respect, and you know the talk of was his switch on or off, and it was always on. Wayne was always looking for more, and I think you have to have that. I mean, when you look at some of these top guys, including Connor McDavid, but Austin Matthews, I would think that switch is rarely is it off. Or do you think, okay, he's kind of mailing in this shift? I don't think you can say like a lot of the young guys don't have that anymore.
No, they don't.
Like it's because I don't think you play in the league that much if you've got that going on.
No, like for example, prior to these last 2 weeks, there were times, and I know they kind of jacked him around a little bit too, because I never understood putting Mitch Marner on a fourth line of any team, not to mention this team that we're talking about. But at times, Mitch Marner was kind of invisible, and that's the type of player that, as dynamic as he is when he has the puck. This guy is worth the price of admission when you go watch the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's one of those things where you got to break that trait as a youngster and as a young kid to not have that MO where it's like, okay, he's going to be good on these games, but then he's going to fall asleep. Like when Jaromir Jagr left the Pittsburgh Penguins and was by himself, and went to Washington Capitals, I remember talking to a couple people at the time where they were covering the New York Rangers, and you could find out whether or not Jaromir Jagr was involved in the game in the first 2 shifts.
Right.
And I remember talking to one of the scouts for the Rangers about the story when Jagr would come to town, because you'd see each other a lot in the Patrick division, and it was like they were happy in the press box at times where it's like, okay, Jagr has not shown up tonight.
Not playing tonight.
We're good for these 60 minutes. That's how now you don't want to get that. It almost seems that's kind of changed around where Jagr comes back and still is a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest players in the history of the game and so forth. But he has had a lazy tendency in the past that has kind of haunted him, and he could have been a lot better, which is hard to believe, a lot better than what we've seen over the course of his career if he had a little bit of an extra gear.
See, and that's interesting too, because for him, and that's not the first time I've heard that, but it's like you're right. It was there was a laziness trait to it, where a guy like Joe McGinley was rarely lazy, but sometimes there was this engagement factor that he maybe wasn't being as productive until someone did something stupid, like get him into a fight. Or stick him, or get him mad.
Yeah, wake him up on the ice.
Yeah, then and there is that term, right? Then they'd wake him up and you get a hat trick. Like, leave it alone, but some guys just wouldn't. Now, speaking of getting it going, I see that Isaiah Thomas, they finally get him back in Cleveland. They're going to play the Portland Trailblazers. So here he comes back on. First time that Cleveland has seen him this year. So if you're a Cavs fan, you're pretty excited about this. This is game number 1. Isaiah Thomas comes onto the court, and they love it in Cleveland. Once again, property of the National Basketball Association and courtesy of our friends at ESPN.
With the offhand, Crowder thought about it. Isaiah had it poked away. Stayed with it, though. Got to hurry. Crowder. Rebound to Portland. And a technical foul is assessed to Isaiah Thomas.
Oh. Yeah.
So he doesn't waste much time picking up the tackle.
Nice.
He picked up 14 last season with the Celtics. And 14 the year before.
So basically he just didn't like being guarded like that.
Yeah.
And he felt that there was maybe some reaching in, and he had to say something. So back in, teed up, and by the way, he's not playing the next game. And out. But that just tells you, in the association, do you really care what he does in the regular season?
Nope. I don't think that team cares what they do in the regular season.
It's January. We'll see you in what, April?
They're the anti-Washington Capitals, where the Washington Capitals will be gunning in March to get those 2 points against the Ottawa Senators, where Cleveland would go to Ottawa with half their squad, or maybe sit out somebody, or start a backup goalie if they were playing hockey. Anything opposite. They'll finish, and mark my words on this, the Toronto Raptors will finish ahead of them in the regular season.
Yeah, and it means nothing.
And it means nothing.
Like, don't get excited. Like, was it great that DeMar dropped 52 the other night and was shooting 3-pointers?
Oh, it was a fantastic game.
Are you kidding? It's fantastic. But you're still gonna I'm going back to bed now. Wake me up in April and see how these things play out.
Like what you see right now, you see Boston in first, Toronto in second, Cleveland in third. That's exactly the order they will finish in 3 months.
It's the one thing that I don't like about the association. That is, sometimes I'm looking at them going, okay, whatever.
Yeah,
whatever. It really doesn't matter to me. It's great to have engaging playoffs. That's why, when you have, I guess if you want to call salary, certainty, that you'd think that, okay, that evens things out. But it's still, when it comes to Major League Baseball, Dave, the playoffs are a circus. You never really quite know who's going to come through, and I don't know why. It shouldn't be even at all. It should look like the Premiership or some of those soccer leagues over in Europe where they have all the money, they have all the world stars, and they're winning. Yeah. That doesn't apply to Major League Baseball, and I still can't figure out why.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Especially, you've even seen in the past, especially in the last 5-6 years, where that wild card winner will gain momentum off of that game and parlay it over a division winner and move on. And so, I mean, there's been a lot of wild card teams that have actually made it to the World Series.
Like a couple of years ago, Kansas City should, by no rights, had any rights winning the World Series.
No, that's exactly it. So we've seen a lot of good wild card teams, and I mean, maybe that's part of the beauty of what Major League Baseball has done with their postseason now, allowing the 2 wild card teams to compete and move their way in. And there's even some talk, and I don't think it's going to happen as early as this year, but there's even some talk that they may increase the amount of teams that actually go to the postseason. I don't know if that's a good idea, but they're trying to generate interest in September, where a lot of times in the past, prior to the wild card, it's like, okay, well, we have our winners. Why are we playing these remaining 30 days? Because and that hasn't been the case since the wild card's been in place. Arguably, that's the number one reason why baseball continues to be the best postseason event.
And don't change it, right? Not more teams. You don't want to see more teams.
You don't want to, but they are talking about it.
I know. I think they've got it right. I think more teams dilutes it. Okay, let's do just a couple little what do we call this, hot shots? Well, you know what? Our good friends at Rocky Cross Construction North, RCCN, as you know, in Calgary, and our good friend Alan, his company. It's based on unparalleled understanding of restoration, construction, and cleaning from single residential or large loss disasters. So you got a big problem, you want to be calling RCCN in not only Western Canada but specifically in Calgary, because at Rocky Cross they'll get it done. They're the best in the business. Make sure you see them. So here's let's throw up their logo, because this is you had it up there. Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to show you something that happened over the holidays, which is very, very big.
Fire.
And so this takes place in Buffalo. And so this is actually a raw feed from TSN, and I believe property is at IIHF, if we have to throw that in there. What you're going to see, and this is a raw feed, so there's no announcing here. Do you like this? So there you are, outside. That's your visual, that's your camera angles. Okay, take that away. Do you like seeing that for the World Juniors, or do you like it sometimes? Do you like it for the Heritage Games? What's your take on the outdoor game, period?
I'm getting kind of tired of it. I understand the cities that host it are not tired of it. They put 40,000 people in that building where they've been struggling to fill indoor rinks. They've made up with this cash grab outside of the building. I understand that part of it, but for the significance of that game, out of all the games we've seen outside in the history of hockey, that's the biggest game that was on the line, and that garbage was performed outside. That's why I don't like it. And hey, and you know what? And who would have thought the snow belt of North America in the end of December would be cold and snow?
Yeah.
I would not think that of Buffalo at the end of December, but hey, I guess I was wrong.
I can't believe that people would have found that interesting. Now, I get there's this weird fetish about sports played in bad weather. You talk about it in football all the time, which in Buffalo, when they used to have playoff games, that worked to their advantage. You take a team that plays in a dome, over, or a warm weather team, over. Very difficult to play in. I'm not a snow bowl kind of guy. I've never liked when the best athletes have to play in garbage. We saw it in the CFL in the Grey Cup. I don't think the Argos had any rights probably before the game started. If it were a clean, sunny day, if it were in a dome, I don't think this thing's even close. But because of the way that snow works, people seem to enjoy that. I personally don't. When I saw the camera angles on that hockey game, I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Did you not know where the facility was?
The rink looked like they were playing in a hallway.
It was terrible.
It was like,
Rusty, you like it, but you didn't like that, did you?
Well, I almost went to the game. I had tickets, ended up having to sell them. I don't know. I would have liked being there, But as far as in such a short tournament playing a game in those conditions, it's a little questionable.
Yeah, I think that to me it's run its course. I get it. But you made another point. But maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's for the guy who's in that city.
That's right. Because in the city,
for the experience of the city.
In the city, depending on what city is it takes over the city. I've been to a couple of these games. The last one I went to was in Winnipeg. It took over the city, and not only for the actual game itself, and it wasn't that cold too, which was great. But you can't predict that. You can't predict weather. I'm sorry, you never can. Even the Heritage game prior to with the alumni put 30,000 people in the crowd, and you sit there and you go 30,000 on Saturday, 30,000 on Sunday, because that's all the building kind of fitted. You get 60,000 people watching two different games. That in a normal building is 4 different gates. That's a big deal when you look at, the costs at the end of the year. And that's why every single year somebody wants me, my turn to host. I want to host now. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you can host then and you can host next year. Okay, good. And you'll host that. Everybody wants this game to showcase it. Now, as far as the TV audience is concerned, that's where the setback is, because as a viewer that wants to watch a good hockey game, don't watch it if you're not interested. I think the game is here to stay. As far as the outdoor game, they'll do it once a year. This year, they're doing it again, more than once a year. I don't get that part of it, because guess what? The Maple Leafs are actually involved in one of these games in Washington coming up, I believe it's February or March, isn't it?
March 3rd.
March 3rd. So that's going to be one of those games where it's like, okay, Leaf fans, Capital fans interested, rest of the NHL could give a crap. But it's going to stay. It makes money. They put them in a lot bigger buildings. You saw the one in Citi Field in New York City. They filled that thing or came close to it. You make more money, Mike. If it's making more money, jersey sales, all the outdoor parking, all the different festivities, all those stupid hats that have the logo on it that says 2018, me. It's more money for the city that does it. It generates more money for the NHL. And also, it puts the NHL on the national map for every single sports station that doesn't necessarily cover the NHL. Hey, look what's happening in hockey today on January 1st. They're outdoors. Isn't that neat? There's your 30 seconds. You move on. And that's what we've seen so many times. That's why it's here to stay. And that's why, as hockey guys that we are, we'll sit there, we'll suck it up, and we can't wait until January the 2nd.
Also, taking a look at, there's always that thing in officiating where a lot of guys will say it's like they number one, when it gets to overtime, you just don't pull the whistle out.
Yep.
About that balance where they have so many rocks or whatever, or you sort of balance your pockets on who's getting what. But generally, you'll find in tighter games, you don't want to recall that penalty. Here's an interesting flashback. This is the Leafs. This is when playoffs were a little painful. So we're going back to a time. In fact, I even see my Uncle Guy Kinnear's trainer. What happens in overtime? Tiger Williams, high sticks, which is hard to do.
These are great jerseys, by the way. I love these jerseys.
Larry Robinson. And I'm like, well, how does Dave Williams? How does Tiger get his stick high enough to actually get Larry Robinson?
He was called Big Bird for a reason.
Exactly. Larry's kind of fallen down, and of course, Tiger can't help it. So they call a high sticking penalty in overtime, and this is in one of the final games for the Leafs. If they lose, they're out. So that means the Montreal Canadiens go on a power play in overtime to try to eliminate the Toronto Maple Leafs. Here's what happens next.
Dryden gets it over to Lafleur. 56 seconds remaining in the penalty to Williams. Back of the net, Lapointe. Lapointe up to Robinson, up at center ice. A pass to Lemaire. He's checked. And it's shot back out again, and there's 42 seconds left in the penalty. Back for Pat Hughes of Montreal. Hughes getting it up at center ice. Lapointe over the line. Lapointe stops. Trying to set it up to Robinson. Robinson waits. Canadians getting set. Here comes the shot. Score!
It's over.
Larry Robinson.
Oops.
On a clean shot.
The Leafs season is over. The Canadians win it at 4:14 of overtime with Williams in the penalty box. The Leafs are furious with the official, and they're holding a couple of players back now for that call against Williams.
Watch this.
The Canadians, meanwhile, are congratulating their big man, Larry Robinson, who run from just inside the
Tiger Williams is being restrained right now.
14, and for the second night in a row,
there's Salman talking to the official.
Leafs have seen their efforts come to no avail.
So you think the game is over? There's Scotty Bowman.
In 4 straight.
Uh-oh.
Tiger Williams is still in a fury and trying to get at the official. Bob Myers. Maloney has pulled Williams to the ice.
Larry Robinson.
Robinson is over.
Ooh, shut up, bastards.
Trying to quiet him down.
All righty. That's old-time hockey, Dave.
That is. Man. Tiger tries doing that in today's NHL.
Yeah, that's not going to be good.
There's 10 for you right there. Oh, by the way, I should mention too, Mike, I just got a text while we were looking at that video. Marissa, for the first time, is actually watching this right now and actually said hi to Uncle Mike and
Marissa,
me.
hi.
So hi to Marissa, who's watching this
Yes.
for the very first time. And earmuffs when Uncle Mike is talking.
I was going to say.
Earmuffs.
Well, you didn't want to hear that bit about 20 minutes ago. What, this porn star? No. Yeah, she's a little Japanese girl. I don't even know why I did that. It's a stupid accent. By the way, I'm going to let the last word today come from our good friend Joe Bowen.
Yes.
In the passing of Johnny Bower, which, and I'll tell you, I'll be as honest as I can. We had some so Johnny Dix.
Okay.
Dixware.
That's right.
The whole family comes over. We're very excited. And I go up to do more of the social media, making sure, because Rusty was putting out those best ofs. And by the way, Rusty, that was a great job. They look great. They were a lot of fun to watch. And I see this thing about R.I.P. Johnny Bower, and I just lost it.
Yeah.
I can only think of 2 people that are well known that ever happened where I just saw it and tears come out. One was John Candy.
Ah, yes.
And this was the other one.
Yeah.
So I took it really hard. I put something out, and I know the Bowers family, some of them, they got back to me, and it's not really why I did it, but it was really hard because I just was so ill-prepared for it. But I guess eventually it happens to everyone. So I thought before we end the show, our good friend Joe Bowen, Bonesy goes on, and he gives a tribute to a guy that he knew really well, and he says it probably better than anybody else.
Time for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's an emotional time for a lot of us who knew a very, very special person. He was my dad's favorite goalie. In fact, holy Mackinac, my dad would bellow after a big save. But to me, he was so much more. He was my idol. He was my hero. He was everything I wanted to be. The greatest goalkeeper in the history of my favorite team, and dare I say, the entire NHL. I put Johnny Bower on a pedestal that no mortal could have ever lived up to. Then years later, when my dream of playing like Bower had been burst, I got to meet my idol, my hero, face to face. And I quickly realized I hadn't put him on a high enough pedestal. Johnny Bower was easily the nicest, most gracious, most humble man I ever met. Oh yeah, he was also a Hall of Fame goaltender. He was so generous with his time and encouragement for a young broadcaster trying to make his way in the NHL. We very quickly became friends, and I certainly wasn't alone. Johnny was friends with everyone. He was loved by all who came into contact with him. Always time for an autograph, a photo, and a story. In his later years, young kids would rush to say hello and ask for a signature. They never saw Johnny Bower play, but their fathers or their grandfathers had, and the youngsters knew they were in the presence of greatness. We lost Johnny Bower this week. We had him with us for 93 years, and we will cherish every memory he produced over that span, whether it was on or off the ice. No member of the Toronto Maple Leafs enjoying its 100th year of existence was as beloved as John Bower. This Tuesday, he'll be eulogized before the Leafs game with Tampa. He'll receive the loudest and the longest ovation in the history of the franchise, because Johnny Bower touched every Maple Leaf fan's heart. Rest easy, my friend. You're gone, but you will never be forgotten.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yep. It's time!
That was so well said. So well done.
Very well said.
Well, no, we covered a lot of ground in today's show, and appreciate that. And, of course, our good friend Joe Bartnick in San Francisco, because Marissa's watching at an adult entertainment fun castle tonight.
Ooh, I'm there.
Yeah, I know you are. Thanks to Joey. By tomorrow, I think we're going to talk to Clark Judge. Is that right?
Yes, we are. Clark Judge will join us.
And we'll talk about some of those names that are up for the Hall of Fame, Football Hall of Fame.
Bingo.
Always a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us. It's a brand new year. Lots of stuff coming your way. Thanks for being a part of it. Join us tomorrow.